Hello everyone, this is Lala, and today not only are we talking about Rivals 1, but we are also starting Era 3 today. And this season is kind of like the Gauntlet and what the Gauntlet 2 represented for Era 2, with the fact that a lot of people before the eras were actively defined saw this season, like the Gauntlet 2, as the end of an era instead of the start of another era. And there are definitely a lot of thematic similarities when it comes to this. Like the Gauntlet 2, Rivals 1 would be the season where a lot of the key players in Era 2 would retire for good, and even the ones that didn't retire would start to wind down after this appearance. And it's a culmination of a lot of the storylines from Era 2, just like the Gauntlet 2 was the culmination for a lot of storylines of Era 1. So I do think that it's kind of interesting that the era started off like this. Another thing that I've noticed and I've kind of mentioned in the last few videos is that this would be the start of a set of seasons that was really about the personal relationships, since a lot of the seasons were themed based off of relationships. Whether it was Rivals, there's 3 in this era, whether there's X's, there's 2 of this era, and I'm pretty sure that there's a few that I am missing. And due to this, there are a lot of pair seasons in this era, and I don't recall that. Actually, yes, there are team seasons with Battle of the Seasons too, but even those were a conglomeration of smaller teams and not two huge teams like Era 1 and Era 2. So we're kind of at the point in time where team seasons were extremely rare. Looking at the rookies that were cast on the season, they are all from the Real World San Diego and the Real World Cancun. So those were the two main seasons that were being cast around this point of time. So the last time I watched this season was well over a year ago at this point, and the only older season that I watched before this was Cutthroat. Obviously, I loved Rivals, but I didn't get the full context of all the interactions and the feuds and the storylines, which I definitely appreciated once I watched it now, and I watched the Era 2 seasons beforehand. Though it does help me watch when I watched all the seasons before the season anyway, so I definitely have a newfound appreciation for it that I didn't have with the time that I watched it for the first time. I do think the drama is at its best this season. Almost everyone delivered in one way, shape, or form. The arguments are still iconic and are heavily referenced today, and it really embraced the Rivals theme, since I do believe that this is arguably the only season where most of the rivals were actually rivals, as we will talk about in the later Rivals sequels, where that really isn't the case for the following two. Well, there is an element of the season that I definitely was disappointed in, and that is the politics. Because you had enemies paired together and then you cast the friends of these enemies, it essentially meant that the two sides that were built during the last half of Era 2, they were all in one alliance, and they worked together throughout the entire season. So while there's a lot of drama, it made the politics very, very boring. And I usually don't talk much about the challenges in general because that's just not my thing, and I watch reality TV for other reasons. But I do think that this has the better set of challenges in a season, so I'm definitely impressed in that element. Anyways, that's all I have to say for the intro. I don't know if it's my top favorite, if Arrow could be, if Arrow could not be. It'll just depend on how I feel, but let's just get to it. So the cast arrives to Costa Rica and are waiting to see if TJ is going to come back, as he had a really bad accident during one of his motor races between this season and Cutthroat. He does appear and he tells them that the cast is paired with their rivals. Of course, he thanks them for all of their letters and emails and stuff like that. But let's talk about the rivals. It is CT and Adam, Car Maria and Laurel, Johnny and Tyler, Teresa and Camilla, Evan and Nehemiah, Paula and Evelyn, and Davis and Tyree. I didn't realize that they had history, but it was from the real world season that I never watched and not the challenge. And honestly, this is probably one of the pairs that could have been replaced, in my opinion. Anyways, we also have Jen and Mandy, Leroy and Adam, Sarah and Caitlin, Ty and Brandon, Jasmine and Janae, Anissa and Robin. Though this was old as hell, and I'm pretty sure they did at least 1 or 2 seasons after their duel, and they were fine from my recollection. And Kenny and Wes, who the theme was essentially based on, where if they get third place in the final, they get nothing, and the top two get money. CT is back after a few seasons off by force because the cast didn't want to deal with him, and he was way too excessive in his fight with Adam. And he makes fun of Evan for being pregnant, and he isn't the first person who says this throughout the season. Wes and Nehemiah are getting close to the rookies, Adam and Leroy, where the latter tells him that he does not trust him, and Leroy really showing off that he doesn't care for the politics side, which will continue throughout his career. CT is apologizing heavily to Adam as he explains that his brother was toe-tagged when, or a bit before the duel 2 happened. The first challenge is high dive, where they have to jump off a high platform into the waterfall, and they have to run off it, where the person who jumps the farthest in the hash mark off, or before the hash marks off, wins the challenge. This challenge was definitely scary as fuck to watch, but I can't say it's a bad challenge. Kenny makes a joke about white man Wes not jumping, and I noticed that a lot of Italian people do this in general when it comes to the white stuff. I mean, Teresa from New Jersey did it to Margaret, and I've seen Polly do it to people on Twitter as well, so I just found that to be interesting, and I wanted to mention it. Adam and Leroy win the challenge for the men. They were initially tied with CT and Adam, but they jumped first, and Jasmine and Janae win the challenge for the women. And they were tied with Anissa and Robin, which must suck for that pair, knowing what happens here, but they jumped first. The last place woman is Evelyn and Paula, as they both jumped over the line, so they're going into elimination. Both of the rookies won the daily, and Evelyn is already plotting, and Laura is also plotting in her journal, where Davis tells Anissa that Laura is trying to get herself and Robin into elimination. Anissa confronts Laura about it, and Laura is kind of stammering, so I guess she doesn't want that smoke from Anissa. That's pretty much what I'm getting from this. Caitlin mentions that Laura is the only person who can take out Paula and Emily, and to stop being a bitch, essentially. Robin gives a weird-ass campaign, and she is not making much sense. I am wondering if some of her issues were starting to take place here. And Anissa outright throws Laura and Carmia under the bus in the deliberation. It's all for naught since Anissa and Robin are voted into elimination. Anissa has the reputation of being an elimination queen, or at least at this point in her career, and Robin is crying about being sent in, with cheering her up. Robin wants to make some money for her child, and it's really sad listening to this, knowing how bad things got in her personal life as I'm recording this. Jasmine has a boyfriend, but she and Tyree are flirting around, and this is such a gross showmance, but it does get them paired together for next season. And the two start kissing on one another, and I do agree with Kenny making fun of Tyree here. Ty is picking on people once again, and Brandon is telling him to be calm to the woman. Adam is annoyed with Ty, so the two of them go at it, and things immediately get physical, where Ty is laughing at Adam hitting him in the face. Ha 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 ha. That's kind of how he's laughing. There now is round 2, as Adam is tired of Ty calling him Guy. Adam ends up knocking over Manny once he hits Ty, and Manny hits her head on the concrete, and she is seeing stars, where Adam is immediately removed from the house. Honestly, what a shame for Adam. He literally won the first daily and could have made a distance through the season, so I don't know if he would have made it to the final, per se. But he's clearly not meant to be on the show, where apparently the mental test wasn't really done thoroughly here. And apparently he turned things around in his personal life, so good for him. Mandy and CT are flirting with one another, and she's cleared okay by the paramedics. Leroy is told that a replacement is coming in, and it's Michael from his Real World season, and they are friends, which definitely defeats the purpose of the Rivals season, but he was most likely an on-location alternate. The elimination is hands-on, where they have to lean on their partner for leverage and their platform will be spread out more, where they have to stay balanced. I do think it's a cool elimination that would have been cool to be a regular elimination in the future. Evelyn and Paula do beat Robin and Anissa, which continues the record of Paula and Anissa facing one another in eliminations throughout the seasons. And I think this might be their last battle against one another, if I remember correctly. CT speaks to Kenny and he's trying to size up Kenny, who thinks that himself, Johnny, and Evan will make it to the final. Anissa's record of being an elimination queen starts to end here, and it's weird seeing her booted so early. But as we all know, nothing will stop Anissa, and she will be back, and she will never go away, essentially. I feel like a feud with Laurel could have started had she stayed, but nothing happened here. It's sad watching Robin wanting to change her life for her son and reading the current update of what happened with her and her family. She really lost all momentum with the show, with 2 early boots that were kind of spread out, and her final season is coming up right after this. I also found out like a day or two before recording this that Robin was apparently pregnant with her son while on the Duel 2, so I guess it was a good thing that she left early on that season. So we see the men do some pranks and put a swan that was under a pool, like a swan statue kind of, on Mandy's bed, and many of the men are talking about how they need to get CT out since he is the biggest threat. Tyler is talking about how his Manka condoms are missing, and people found out that Jasmine and Tyree are having sex and apparently using Tyler's condoms, where she makes it clear that she's using Tyree to get out her sexual kinks out since her boyfriend is not there. Mike is trying to fit in by talking about science, and it's really just not going well. Car Crusher is the daily where they have to pick a car and drag it to the crush zone with those huge construction vehicles, with both people in the partnership having to share a seat. Jasmine and Jonay are arguing about making a list since they won the last daily and it's their responsibility to choose the list for the next daily pertaining the order. And people are outright hoping that CT loses, despite some of them being friends with Adam in real life, apparently. In general, the challenge was fun enough, and it seems like something they would do in Era 4, so I guess that it is ahead of its time in this regard. Evelyn and Paula win the daily out of the women, and CT and Adam win out of the guys, ruining the plans for the guys, with Wes and Kenny automatically going to elimination since they got last place. Tyree pretty much knows that he and Davis are going in, as Wes throws them under the bus in negotiations, and Kenny mentions that if they can't beat this weak-ass team, they should definitely go home now. Davis is annoyed with Tyree for being so horrible in the game, as he apparently trained a lot for the season, and being paired with Tyree is essentially a death sentence. And Tyree is ranting about his situation. He tries to get Jasmine and Jonay to be on the same page. Jonay mentions that they are fine, as it leads to her stating that she doesn't like Camille. We see Kenny join Wes and Nehemiah in Nehemiah's sage calming practices, which is so not like Kenny, and I guess this shows the difference between Kenny and Evan, which we'll get into in a few episodes. But this was before the situation that happened with the woman, so I guess Kenny might have been somewhat changing before that Tanya lawsuit bit him in the butt, but we'll get more into that later. Camilla calls Jonay Jasmine, Jonay corrects Camilla, and Camilla doesn't give a fuck, since it's a name and it's not a big deal. Jasmine tries to speak to Camilla about the situation, with the latter not wanting to speak to her, so Jonay and Camilla start arguing. Jonay is pulled back by Jasmine, and then she dares to speak to Camilla out in the corner, and she's not yelling, but she's vocally projecting herself while everyone's trying to cheer this on because they want drama. They try to speak, and the conversation really isn't going anywhere, where I don't even know if passive-aggressive is the word for this exchange. Somehow it ends up with Teresa and Jasmine going at it, and Teresa is sizing herself up against Jasmine, which makes Teresa look lame as hell. She did this with Camilla last season, and I mentioned that Teresa looks stupid sizing herself up against someone who is smaller than her, and Jasmine is a lot smaller than Camilla, where Jasmine has to be pulled back and consoled by Sarah before Jasmine punches a mirror. It isn't a coincidence that Camilla confused the names of someone who is mixed with black and a monoracial black woman's names, and there's a long list of other racially insensitive bullshit that Camilla did on her challenge career, and we're only on her second season. Anyways, this was definitely a standout moment for Jasmine, and I guess Jonay, but Jasmine was the one punching a mirror, so that was crazy. Blast Off is the elimination where they have to push the partner out of the circle, and I do like this elimination since it's just physical and strategic contact. Since Tyree is a bigger guy who played football, it is expected that he's going to win the elimination, but Kenny and Evan beat Davis and Tyree. We do see Mandy and CT getting closer, and we have more plotting on CT, while also telling Adam to not let CT steamroll him. Okay, I am shocked that they casted Davis and Tyree based on like a 5-year-old feud, but I'm assuming that they just wanted to bring Tyree back based on him being cast for a few seasons after this, and it's annoying to me that he was cast and given so many chances after flopping consistently. Tyree had a romance and affair with Jasmine, and this would get them partnered together for the next season, but he continues to perform really poorly here. Davis really didn't do anything memorable on the season other than complain about his partner, and it's clear that he has nothing going on that would fit the challenge, especially with the themes of the feature, and honestly he was lucky to get cast for this, so yeah. Mandy and CT are hanging out even more, and Wes is really feeling Mandy as well, his former partner, and this will definitely be something to remember for later on in the season. Mike decides to dress like Tyler, who is wearing his thong, or who wears Tyler's thong. It's very weird as hell, to be honest. And people are kind of just laughing at him in jest. Evelyn and Paula are speaking about the jungle to Cara Maria, and Paula is mentioning that people on the street are telling her that she absolutely needs to win, and it doesn't seem like they like Laurel much, which isn't shocking. Jonay and Jasmine are talking about how Evelyn and Paula are running things for the women, so they need to win, and we have Camilla and Teresa being pretty worried about their position, since while they aren't rookies, they are some of the newer women, as they debuted a season and 2 seasons ago. Wes and CT are talking, where CT tells him that he will smoke him, yo, and he will take his head, and CT starts absolutely snapping at him. Wes goes away to throw CT's bed over the terrace, and this just fires CT up even more. So CT moves the bed back, and he yells in Wes's face, who's very nonchalant, where CT essentially punks the hell out of Wes. CT mentions that his priority is to fuck you up, Wes, and apparently this happened for hours. Wes talks to Adam about CT screaming in his face for 2 hours, and Wes is now playing the victim, where he does pick another argument with CT in the next morning about what was or what was not said the prior night. Sink or swim is the daily where they have to go in a box over water and throw out the sand as much as possible, and once they raise high enough, they need to grab hold onto the zip line. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this daily challenge, and we literally see Jasmine and Teresa throwing their mud against one another, which was pretty fun. Mike ends up going to the hospital after the daily, though he's fine, where CT and Adam win the daily, with Evelyn and Paula winning once again. Cara Maria and Laurel are automatically going into elimination, and people keep on joking about Michael needing to get laid. The guys are talking about Jasmine and Jonay being the easy woman to vote in, though Paula, is plotting for Teresa and Camilla to go in, since them against Cara Maria and Laura ensures that a threat goes, which is very smart of Paula, and I really do like this move, and it does set them up very well. The JAK crew speaks up, and Paula pitches what she wants, since it's the best for her game if they care so much, and they usually don't do what's best for her game. Laurel refuses to mention a name, and Cara Maria is annoyed with the scenario where Paula mentions that in the deliberation that she wants Camilla and Teresa, despite their pitch to get Jasmine and Jonay thrown in. Camilla and Teresa are pissed off that their friends backstabbed them, and I don't know why they are shocked, since they are still relatively new to the challenge world. Teresa rants to Mandy about the situation, and both of the women are trying to quit, and at this point, I'm guessing that she's pulling a quarrel, and Teresa doesn't want to be here anymore. Mandy is talking about rough and raunchy sex with CT, and he really isn't biting. Though Wes is literally watching them from the sidelines, and it's just weird as hell, especially with how jealous Wes is. Wes ends up speaking to Mandy about CT, who is one of the worst people ever and is a psychopath, where they start arguing about it, and she's annoyed with the entire situation. She then goes back to CT to complain about Wes, though he admits in the confessional that flirting is a part of his strategy to weaken with the woman and to also get in good with them. Jonay speaks to Teresa about how she shouldn't quit, and Teresa says that they are not her and they should essentially just zip it. Sarah tells her that people who quit end up regretting it, and then a bunch of other people speak to her about it. Apparently, it was all a plan all along for the two of them to pretend to quit, and I think it's just stupid as hell. Cara Maria tries to speak to Laurel since the latter is a poor communicator overall, and it said how that hasn't changed 13 to 14 years later. The elimination is Door Jam, where there are 48 rotating doors where the logos need to face their side in 5 minutes, and we've seen several variations of this in the season since. Laurel and Cara Maria do beat Teresa and Camilla, and we have one more segment of Enfin, Johnny, and Wes talking about how to get rid of CT, and Evan mentions that he will sell the daily, where he will beat CT, and more of this for later on in the season. Camilla was awful in this season, and while she does bring drama, the racist undertones are so hard to ignore or to just forget about this season, and this is only her second season. She performed decently enough for being an early boot, but meh. I forgot how annoying and unlikable Teresa is on the early seasons, and she looked pathetic using her height to tower over Jasmine, who's like 4 foot nothing. But she does bring drama, so she isn't a dud, and she wasn't a dud this season. She seemed really entitled for some reason, so seeing it backfire was great to watch. The guys are ogling the women at the beach, and the JEK crew are talking about their partners and wanting to make the best of their situations, essentially. Wes is talking to Evan and Kenny, and some of them about how they need to get CT out yet again, and we are reminded that the alliance is Wes and Kenny, John and Tyler, Evan and Nehemiah, since they are partners, and the plan is for Evan and Nehemiah to get last, and then the house throws in CT and Adam into elimination. Evelyn and Paula speak to Wes to tell him that it is not a good move to try to take CT out like this, since Evan is fat and out of shape, though Wes mentions that they have 2 more chances to get rid of him after this. Paula and Ty are... There's a lot of tomfoolery going around. It's truth or dare. We have Paula and Ty kissing one another, despite them apparently having a history of not getting along last season, which they didn't show. Oh, okay, I get it now. I think this might have been a sign pertaining what's to come between the two of them next season. I didn't put that connection together until literally just now, so that's interesting. And we have Laurel kissing Mandy, and it is truth or dare. CT ends up streaking where both Laura and Mandy are attracted and ogling CT. Leroy is apparently the only guy not scared of CT, and I'm sure that ended up changing over the years. And hammock crawl is the challenge, where they have to go across a bunch of hammocks above water, which is an interesting challenge to be honest, though it is pretty simple in its setup. Paula and Evelyn do the plan of putting CT and Adam first in the challenge so everyone can look at their mistakes and improve on it. Though Evelyn really doesn't want to do it, but she doesn't want to burn her alliance either. Caitlin refuses to do the challenge, and of course Sarah is very pissed off. CT is trying really hard to get Adam to say that he is his friend, and it's honestly ridiculous, and you can kind of tell that he's trying to do PR for himself, just so the producers can realize that CT is safe enough to be on future seasons. Cara Maria and Laura win the challenge, and Johnny and Tyler also win for the men, because Evan and Nehemiah touched too many hammocks at the same time, despite Evan and Nehemiah initially being in the lead. Kenny and Wes end up getting last place again, so they're going into elimination, and Wes is making fun of Kenny for shitting the bed. The plan to boot CT is now on hold since, of course, They don't want to be the ones to take him out, and the plan is to make sure that Wes and Kenny survive this. And things are switching around towards Brendan and Ty being put in, and Wes does pitch this to Mike, and Mike reports this back to Leroy. Of course, Brendan and Ty are going to pitch for Leroy and Mike since they're the only pair that is newer to the challenge than they are, with Brendan on his third season and Ty on his second season. Though Brendan is shocked that their names are being thrown under the bus, though like I mentioned with Teresa and Camilla, they shouldn't be shocked since they're still some of the newest teams. Anyways, Brendan and Ty are voted in, and Wes gets snippy with Jasmine for not voting with the group, as she voted for Leroy and Mike to go in. And Evelyn brags to her allies about how their plan was dumb as hell. Cara Maria speaks to Brendan and Ty about how if they win, things will change the group, or things will change in the group dynamic. And Johnny and Jasmine are in this group as well. They heard bitch and moan about Jasmine and Johnny's votes, like it makes a difference. It's always stupid when these shows, people complain about one vote, which wouldn't have made a difference anyways. The cast goes to the club, and they're trying to make Paula and Mike into a showman, and Laurel is outright flirting with CT, who is definitely enjoying the attention, and Bananas lays into Laurel a bit for trying to get with CT. Mandy complains to Paula about Laurel flirting with CT, and Paula calls out CT's strategy in her confessional. Ty does not have the most confidence due to his loss last season, and we are getting a lot of focus on Kenny being down on himself due to him not performing well in the challenges. The elimination is going up, where they have to get out of the water and climb to the top of the rope, and I do think this elimination is aesthetically pleasing to look at and watch. The first round was a tie, so Wes and Brendan compete in the tiebreaker since I'm assuming they performed the best in the first round, and Wes does beat Brendan, meaning that Brendan and Ty are eliminated. There is more focus on Kenny sucking in the challenges and eliminations afterwards, and Wes is giving Kenny a fake pep talk. I don't have much to say about these two. Ty did provoke Adam into popping him in the first episode, but that was really it pertaining his contribution to the season, and Brendan didn't do much of anything in the season, and it's disappointing since Brendan had such a strong last season, but he went back to obscurity here. They definitely have more seasons, so the season being a dud for them all around really didn't do anything for them overall. So, I guess that's good for them. It is the halfway point of the season, and everyone is having fun at this point, where Adam talks about having a crush on Jen for 3 years now, and wanting to make his move now. He watches Jen skinny dip, and Tyler is also skinny dipping with a bunch of women as well. Sarah is talking about how she doesn't really believe in Caitlin's skills as a player, especially on a physical standpoint, and to be fair, I don't really blame her for this, but it's clear that the edit is setting them up for a huge fall. Jen is speaking to Jasmine and Jonay about them doing good, and Jasmine mentions that people are treating her like a baby. Jen mentions that it's a vet thing, yo, and she hasn't seen an elimination in 3 seasons for a reason. Jasmine and Jonay are talking about their predicament, where Jonay mentions that Jasmine is a Debbie Downer, and Jasmine feels like she's being cut off consistently, and Jonay is not taking this seriously. They continue arguing about their dilemma and them not hearing one another, and Jasmine ends up throwing her mic at Jonay, where she throws a flip. She walks off as she now wants to quit. She's trying to leave the building, and she's having a huge mental breakdown. Evan literally carries Jasmine back into the house as she is ranting and raving about how Jonay never hears her, and it is not just about her. And Jonay has to give a fake apology. Jasmine is just gold during the season. The challenge is against the current, where they are rowboating upstream on a strong current going downwards, and the best time to cross the boat ends up winning the challenge. Overall, it's a very fun challenge to watch, and they put enough limitations to the point where it isn't really dangerous. Caitlin and Sarah are going right into elimination since they are last, and Sarah is of course blaming her partner, with Johnny and Tyler and Jen and Mandy winning the dailies for their gender. And Mandy is happy that she finally won a daily during her challenge career. Jasmine and Jonay know that they are going to get voted in, and Wes outright tells Jonay that he's voting her in, where the guys decided to vote them in after they didn't vote with them during the last vote. And this is honestly some stupid herd mentality bullshit, but it is what it is. Wes brags about how he is running the house, and whatever he says goes. And he, of course, says this in the confessional and never to people's actual face. Jasmine still feels good about how she voted, and she shouldn't regret it, and she doesn't regret it, and she has every right to feel that way. Jasmine and Jonay are voted in, and TJ mentions that it's been 2 votes where everyone thinks that the rookies are going to be booted at this point. Both of them, sorry, I said it quickly. TJ mentions that the vote took 2 minutes, though he always gives them 20 minutes to deliberate, so it just shows how static their politics is at this point. Both of the rookies have very good mentalities about them being voted in, and we do see Adam and Jen, who are cuddling, making fun of Leroy snoring. Adam talks to some of the guys about him wanting to make a move on Jen, and Evan throws some shade at him in the confessional, so it kind of just shows where Adam is on that hierarchy. Yeah. Jen talks about what happened in the bed during the next moment, where she is grossed out by him, and she mentions that she has to be blackout drunk to do anything with him, while Adam is bragging about what happened to the other guys. All of this is just really, really, really icky, especially with what Kellyanne mentioned about Adam regarding him essentially taking advantage of her. So, yeah, TJ appears in the house to get the nominees, or the people the nominees, where one person from each team needs to come with him, with Jasmine and Caitlyn going with him. Sarah outright mentions to Jonay in front of the entire house that she can beat her in anything, and Jonay knows that she can beat Sarah in some stuff. Honestly, the setup for this is so great. Unburied is the elimination where the people who do not go with TJ has to undig their partner who's under a bunch of hay and they're stuck on some box. And then they have to complete a puzzle afterwards, and they didn't know where their partner is in the haystack. They have to move the puzzle stack from one pole to another to win, but they have to hold them in some of the others as well. Jonay ends up pulling the win, and Sarah is the reason why they lose, as Caitlyn kind of predicted how the puzzle should go, but Sarah just wasn't listening. Johnny and Tyler are talking about how they have been getting along better than they have over the last 6 years of them knowing one another since the Real World season, and how most of the other teams do not like one another. And this is clearly a setup pertaining their winners in it. Sarah continues to her act of being cocky and smug as hell, only for her to get defeated on her own merit and to be humbled, which I do find to be pretty entertaining. At the same time, she did not do a whole lot throughout the season, despite her great fall. Caitlyn is just not meant for the show. She really isn't competitive at all and doesn't have much personality whatsoever. So this being her final season, especially when she likes the interactions, to warrant getting cast again, especially on these other themed seasons, makes sense. CT and Laurel are flirting, and Bananas is definitely stirring the pot with Mandy about it. CT tells Laurel about wanting to go back to New Zealand due to what happened on the Duel 2, and Mandy mentions to Laurel that she, i.e. Laurel, had her, i.e. Mandy's, sloppy seconds, which is a flashback to them arguing last season and Laurel calling Mandy a whore. Wes is speaking to Evelyn and Paula about how he is threatened by CT and that it's stupid to throw in... Evelyn and Paula are telling Wes that it's stupid to throw in Nehemiah and Evan. Speaking about them, Evan and Nehemiah are arguing because they have completely different personalities and values. Evan mentions that Nehemiah's spirituality is false. I do remember them making fun of it a lot on the Duel 2, so there's some continuity there. And Nehemiah pretty much thinks that Evan is a very shitty person since they have done these challenges together and the season has not made them get along better at all. Catch and Release is the daily where one partner is hiking over the ocean and the other has to run to catch their partner. Then they have to swim to a destination. So they are repeating what should have been done with the last men's elimination. The challenge is pretty decent, but it isn't something that is the most notable overall. Apparently, the reason why Evan suggests that he and Nehemiah go in against CT and Adam, even in the beginning of the season, is that he couldn't commit to the full time filming this season and had to go back to school. So if he wins the elimination, he helps his friends make it to the end, but if he loses, he goes back to school. I don't think Nehemiah was aware of all of the details about this, and apparently he doesn't know that Evan is throwing this challenge. Emphasis on this challenge because we will get more into that later. Nehemiah ends up throwing his lifeguard at Evan since he's pissed off and knows what Evan did, and he curses him out in front of everyone after the challenge is finished, where he states that there's a bunch of bitches in this cast, and his partner's the biggest bitch of all. And you really see Nehemiah this fired up. Bananas mentions in the confessional that he doesn't see why Nehemiah is so mad, since it was discussed throughout the entire season that they would be going in against Adam and CT. And we did see a few episodes back, Nehemiah was present in these conversations. I also found it weird since his best friend, Wes, engaged in a lot of these conversations, and I doubt Wes wouldn't tell Nehemiah about it. Even after the challenge happened, Wes mentions, of course in the confessional, that Nehemiah knew of the plan over 2.5 weeks ago. Nehemiah is ready to fight Evan, and Evan is wanting him to make a move, since he's also pissed off that Nehemiah threw his lifeguard or life jacket at him. And, of course, Wes splits it off, mentioning that his best friend is just mad. Cara Maria and Laurel and Kenny and Wes do win the day, with Evan and Nehemiah being dead last, so they are automatically going into the elimination. We see some more boring Laurel and CT stuff, and when the nomination takes place, CT automatically walks up to the front, but he tells them to say it to his face that they are voting him in, and of course some of the men aren't trying to do that. But he dares them to do it anyways. CT ends up telling Mandy that he regrets whatever happened with them, and then she ends up crying to Wes, who is her friend, as he tried to warn her throughout the season that CT is like this. CT then walks in on their conversation, where he tells Wes that he is better than Wes, and Wes better stop his pot stirring, but he would never hook up with her. I am assuming that he's referring to Laurel, but this could also be referring to Mandy. Anyways, conveniently, after Mandy rants to Evan and Banana some more, and Banana's just making fun of the entire situation, we see Mandy and Wes quote-unquote cuddling, and I'm saying quote-unquote cuddling because I'm pretty sure they're doing more than cuddling on their bunk bed. And it just showed Wes's rationale towards the entire situation, the entire season, because he was really jealous and he wanted Mandy for himself. Jasmine decides to be a sneaky spy where she crawls under the bed and slithers to see what is happening, and she realizes that they're essentially getting it on, but she gets caught by the couple. She runs down to the others to tell them, and then Jen ends up running to see them hooking up, and she reports it some more. I just found this to be a really fun moment. Whale slide is the elimination where they have to slide down the obstacle with the pole, and they're attached to harnesses. There's a lot of speculation that Adam was trying to throw this elimination as he kept on looking over to Evan, and then there's talk about how Evan absolutely threw this elimination because he had to go back to school. Either way, CT and Adam beat Nehemiah and Evelyn calls Evan a beached whale in the confessional. Evan was definitely on his way out of the show by this point, with focusing more on his other endeavors and being checked out, so I don't think he would have done many seasons and been around long enough, even if the lawsuits that didn't get him banned after the season took place, or it wasn't a thing at all. So essentially, I think he was done with the show or on his way out, with or without the lawsuit. Evan and Nehemiah's feud was entertaining, and I wished we saw more of it throughout the season, since I don't recall Nehemiah ever being this fired up on a show before, and I did find it to be pretty entertaining. Anyways, I do see why Nehemiah wasn't on the flagship show anymore until 40, since he didn't have the relationships for the themed seasons that made up the Era 3 seasons. But they chose not to put him on Battle of the Sexes and had Danny on instead, which I just found weird. Anyways, his story continues a decade after the season. Paula is joking with Mandy about banging Michael, and this is all such a joke to me, and a part of me thinks that this was done to get camera time, as Paula and Michael are pretending to be lovey-dovey, though we do see them make out a bit. Wes talks about him liking to hook up with Mandy, and like I mentioned earlier, he was clearly jealous of CT getting with her, and we do see them hooking up more and more at this point. CT and Laurel are talking, and Bananas is annoyed that Laurel ignored their alliance from the past to work with CT. And John and Kenny talk about, they talk to Laurel about her hanging out with CT is causing her to hang herself in the game, and they tell her that she's going to get burned by him, but it makes her want to get to know CT even more. It is the last woman's elimination before the final, and Kenny is speaking to the crew about putting in Jen and Mandy last in the challenge so they can have the best chance of winning. Cara, Maria, and Laura are being placed on the bottom of the alliance chain due to Laura's hookup with CT, and Cara Maria mentions that Jen is also hooking up with the enemy Adam, which Jen will definitely remember later, or for later. Sawed Off is the daily where one pair is held above water and they have their partner spraying them, so the saw can break with the person falling. They're split into two teams and you have to be on the winning team to win, and the girl with the fastest time is safe. It is a decent enough challenge to watch, but to be sprayed by the water would be brutal. Technically, Jen and Mandy were the fastest women, but because they are on the losing team, they end up losing overall, partially due to Cara Maria. So Johnny and Tyler and Paula and Evan win. Paula and Evelyn win, and Paula is thrilled to not be booted right before the final, since that's been her trajectory for several seasons now, with Laurel and Cara Maria going straight into elimination. Laurel feels isolated, and she is really sad, with Kenny comforting her. Cara Maria is talking about Jen closing to the endgame, and she wants Coaster, Jen, and Maddie going into the elimination. Jen hears this conversation, and this is happening when they are on the bus ride back, and it is just riling her up more, since the goal is to avoid elimination. And to be fair, Jen is right about this. Laura is campaigning to Jasmine to rally the votes to get Jen and Mandy into elimination, and the rookies speak to CT about the vote, where CT doesn't trust the plan, since Laura is having them do it instead of Laura campaigning to him. Laura does speak to CT, and he ends up shutting it down because he thinks that it is sketchy, and she claims that maybe the others were right about him. Mandy curses Cara Maria out for trying to get her into elimination before the final, and we do see Jen rant to her allies about it, and Tyler is not going to let his girl, Jen, get thrown in before the final, and he's not going to appreciate his girl, Jen, getting targeted. Jen does confront Cara Maria at the deliberation, and it takes literally 2 minutes out of the 20 for Jasmine and Janae to go into elimination. We do see Jen and Adam and Mandy and Wes get even closer, and Cara Maria misses Abram, and this is happening when they're all at the club, so she is isolating herself. Johnny does speak to Cara Maria about the situation, and Jen hears her name come out of Cara Maria's mouth. She confronts Cara Maria about saying she's having sex to stay in the game, and Jen is clapping in her face, and she is ready to throw down, where she has to be held back several times during the exchange. CT, for some reason, randomly decides to get involved for some reason. He makes fun of Abram and our horses, how he'll fold Abram up and put him in his pocket. We do see in an outside clip that Jen does end up pushing Cara Maria, but of course nothing happens to her yet again. Laurel tells Cara Maria that she needs to stand up for herself, and we do see the two women get closer to one another. Jen continues ranting the next morning about how she still wants to punch Cara Maria, and she hopes that the latter loses. Jen mentions that Cara is mad that she played a better game than her on the challenge, and Cara Maria makes fun of Jen for clapping in her face, and Jen makes fun of Cara Maria's voice. So the entire house is wearing blue to support Jasmine and Janae in the elimination, and they want Cara Maria and Laura gone, where Wes mentions that if no one likes you, it is your fault. And it's ironic that he is saying this, because I wonder if he felt this way about his situation on the Ruins, where everyone hated him. Some people do switch their shirts, i.e. Kenny, to support Cara Maria and Laura, and I will give Kenny props for that at least. We even see CT wearing a blue shirt, which is a spit on Laura's face, and I don't know why CT is joining the nerd herd to side against Laura and Cara Maria when they all want him out, and the reason why they're in this position is partially because of Laura's association with him. So I thought that was kind of just lame on CT's part. So the elimination is blasted off, and it was always clear that Laurel and Cara Maria were going to beat Jasmine and Janae in this, and that is essentially what happens. Jen announces from a text TJ sends that they're going from Costa Rica to Argentina, where it's the first time where the final happens in another location, and this will be a common thing throughout this era specifically. But there's, of course, going to be a final men's elimination taking place before that. I really enjoyed the pair of Jasmine and Jonee on this season, and this is probably one of Jonee's wilder seasons personality-wise compared to her future seasons. It's interesting that they're pretty quiet on their boot episode and they're given an underutilized edit. They didn't get along, but then they realized that they had to work together and they handled themselves well when they won their elimination and when they lost, to the point where I do believe they're friends now. Jasmine was a star on the season and was just a complete train wreck in a good way that I couldn't help but not turn away from. I couldn't help but stay glued to her. I couldn't turn away even if I wanted to. It makes a lot of sense why they became regulars for the first half of this era, and we've seen them on the spin-offs more recently. Everyone has their own theories about why they're going to Buenos Aires, but they do togo up to celebrate the house in Costa Rica for the final time, but we do see Paula and Mike kissing, and they mess/whip Mike too much. He ends up having a huge rant against Bananas, where they throw too many cookies on him, or in his bed, and he says, F you, F you, F you, F you, F you, to most of the guys on the cast, while he is screaming his head off. Mike literally packs to move into the other room, and Mike ends up yelling at Leroy for not standing up for him. And this would kind of be consistent with Leroy throughout his career pertaining not standing up for certain people. They finally leave Costa Rica for Buenos Aires, and we see CT and Laurel somewhat clear their air, though he denies wearing a blue shirt, stating that he was wearing black, which is honestly just CT being delusional and full of shit. The cast is monkeying around in a new location, and things end up going very wrong. We skip time and see Carmaria soaked with soda and Wes pouring the entire bottle over her head, and Paula is taunting Carmaria about it being funny, and she's sticking up for Wes because she is lawyer. Though I don't remember them ever being allied to one another in any prior season, so that's just odd. Wes then yells at Carmaria for no one liking her, and Laurel yells at Wes for she yells at him so he can get the fuck out! Get the fuck out! And she repeats it several times. Laurel then consoles Carmaria, though Laurel will hold this over Carmaria's head forever, as we know. Laurel then goes in on Paula pretending her being anorexic, old as hell, and she'll never get married or have children. She has fake boobs, is ugly, and is doing reality TV at 40 years old. And none of this has aged well since Paula beat all of this, and Laurel is like 39, still doing reality TV. Tyler defends Paula and mentions that Laurel should not have mentioned personal stuff, though Laurel tells him to F off. And it's interesting because Tyler was more than fine with people picking on Carmaria, so he's just being a hypocrite here. And now Paula is a complete mess. I also forgot to mention that Laura was going to throw a bottle on Wes, though apparently she did throw it on him based on what Banana said with Wes on the podcast recently, but I guess they just decided not to show it. But anyways, Tyler stops out of this because he didn't want the piano to get dirty, showing his priorities, I guess. What the fuck ever. Paula is used to fucking up in the night and then apologizing to people in the morning afterwards. So she was expecting an apology from Laurel and is annoyed that she hasn't gotten one. The final challenge is Bombs Away, where only the men are partaking in it. Actually, no, that's a lie. All of them are partaking in it. But it is a male's elimination, so it matters for them, where all the women, no matter what, are in the final. One person is at the bottom of the helicopter, and the partner has to climb the rope while being flown to rip a cord to release their partner, and they will both end up in the water. All the guys are trying to figure out who should go in with CTE and Adam, and the fact that Kenny is letting Wes lead the conversation pisses off Bananas. Since Kenny being passive strategically is just never him, and Banana sees it as a pussy move, essentially. Leroy and Mike win the daily, so they're in the final, and CT and Adam are going into elimination for being last, with Evelyn and Paula also winning against the women. TG makes them vote right on the spot for the other nominee, and it ends up being Johnny and Tyler as the other nominees. Tyler starts to snap and vent because he was voted in, and Bananas also rants, but Tyler is showing his complete ass even more in the conversation compared to Bananas, which says so much because Bananas is the king of throwing victimization tantrums. Anyways, Tyler then blames Evelyn for throwing him under the bus. CT and Adam feel very confident about their plan, where Tyler and Bananas are plotting, with Jen being there, about how they're going to win the elimination. And Tyler feels bad because Paula threw him under the bus out of everyone, and I guess they're close friends. He speaks to her about it, and she doesn't get why she is being blamed over everyone else, since the guys were the ones who controlled this. Tyler then brings up defending Paula yesterday in her face while Kenny stood there, and she mentions that she was closer to Kenny longer than she was to him. I found this interesting, and it says a lot because Paula and Tyler did the Real World season together, way before Kenny was even a thing. Tyler continues his tirade with Leroy and Mike catching strays since they don't get why they are being blamed over it. Leroy mentions that Tyler is acting like this because he is too afraid to go against CT and he should just shut up and deal with it. Tyler does a microaggressive yos. I've won 3 challenges and tries to essentially sun Leroy as a rookie. The JEK crew starts to bash Adam since he is a different person due to finally getting some woman for the first time in his life, and he wants to beat Adam mentally so he could lose. Johnny then decides to argue with Adam, with Kenny joining in, and it's clear that all of this was so premeditated. CT decides to defend his partner, causing for all the other Italian guys to go at it, and they're all in one another's faces. The 3 men accuse one another about ganging up on other people. They are pointing their fingers at one another, and CT ends up getting separated by Adam, where CT mentions that they're going to be friends, and we all know how poorly that aged. They talk about their 10-year history throughout the show, and even going back to the Real World season, which was a decade ago at this point, and Adam mentions in the confessional that they will not be close outside of the game. Laurel makes CT breakfast and decides to wear CT's shirt, despite the latter wearing the other team's shirt in elimination ago. Anyways, the elimination is T-Bone, where there's a T-path where each of them are in their separate corners of the T, and they have to run to the other side to grab balls, or a specific color of balls, and then move it back, but they will collide in the middle as a result of physical contact. They are given designated colors that they need to grab, and Adam continuously grabs CT's balls, so there's a lot of speculation pertaining whether he threw it or not, due to a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff that was made during the first 2 eras, where some people would throw the final eliminations, so certain people can get to the final and win, and they will sneak money to the person who threw it for them. They'll get some of the winnings undercover. Anyways, Tyler and Bananas do beat CT and Adam, and I did really enjoy this elimination, and I don't think we see it return after this. CT still mentions that he and Adam are friends now, though they don't become friends after this, so clearly CT was putting on for the cameras. CT had an all-star performance. He was essentially the foil to everyone's plans, where he continuously won safety, had several showmances throughout the season, and had several arguments with the JEK crew and West throughout the season. Adam was kind of just there, though his showman with Jen was pretty creepy in my opinion, though he competed well enough. At the same time, there was nothing left for him after the season, since Jen stopped doing the show and CT isn't an enemy anymore, and he didn't really fit in the other themes. And I honestly think he only got this season due to CT. Kyle and Maria comfort Laurel after CT's elimination, and they do see one another as sisters now. They move to another house. Wes mentions in the confessional that he is not sorry for dumping soda on Cara Maria, and it's one of the best things that could have happened to her. Paula manifests finally winning a challenge, and she honestly just wants the title. She doesn't even care about the money at this point. Mandy talks about how she's friends with Jen now, or friendly enough with Jen now, because she doesn't see them being best friends, and she understands why Cara felt that way about Jen, since that's how Mandy felt 2 seasons ago. Somehow Wes ends up in the conversation, and Cara Maria does not appreciate people who are cool with Wes at all. Cara Maria and Wes continue to argue, where he mentions that everyone thinks that she is fake as hell. He mentions that they can have a constructive conversation or he can make her cry, and it's her choice. Where he mentions that she is a crier, she's immature, she only talks about her horses, and Abe, which is why he doesn't like her. But she mentions that he has not spoken to her the entire season. and what he thinks of her does not matter. Tyler and Jen have been throwing up, and Tyler has been having diarrhea. The doctor advises Tyler to not compete in the final, but he's going to do it anyways, and he's not going to give up. And he has to go for it, due to all the work he put in during the season. They have to hold onto a rope in the water for 200 yards for the final, then paddle for 3 miles in a kayak, and then it's a foot race with a bunch of checkpoints in between to get to the end, which is at the top of a mountain. Paula and Evelyn are in the lead, with Cara Maria and Laurel right behind them, but Jen and Mandy are paddling in circles and the guys are making fun of them. Johnny and Tyler are in the lead for a bit, but Kenny and Wes do end up passing them in the rowboating, where Leroy and Mike are far behind. Once they do arrive to land, they have to pick up a ball to carry it, which is also attached to a chain. Then they have to remember the campsite, and then carry some mud in a barrel and dump it into a bigger basket, one through a mushy river, built the tent from scratch, hence why they needed to remember the details of the prior tent. Laurel and Cara Maria are in the lead at this point, and then they move on to the final feast, where they have to eat everything on their plate, and Evelyn and Paula do take back their lead here. They then have to climb uphill on a mountain, with Jen and Mandy being so far behind everyone else. Wes's leg is cramping up, and Kenny is yelling for Wes to get his ass up, where his knee is cramped up, where Kenny literally has to carry Wes for a bit, and it's just hilarious, as Wes is kind of just like heaving. They then have to spend the night on a mountainside, and they're shocked that the final is continuing on to tomorrow, which has never happened before in the challenge history. Because it is so dark and they have not made it to the nighttime checkpoint, or the eating checkpoint at this point, the producers DQ Jen and Mandy. Jen and Mandy definitely had a season. Mandy was very fun with her meltdowns, her drama with Laurel, and the breakdown of her showmans turned nomans with CT throughout the season, which then turned into her showmans with Wes. It is said that her journey is coming to a close at this point, as I found her to be really likable, and I'm glad she had a good season here. Jen was definitely entitled, aggressive, and unlikable in this season. Her streak with finals and sucking at them continued here, with this being her worst performance by far, and her showmans with Adam was cringe. I do think she could have done a few more seasons, as she fit the themes that would become the next few seasons, but she chose to bow out of the franchise here. So, only one partner gets to sleep, while the other partner has to stand on a rock, and then they alternate. Kenny and Wes continue arguing over Wes's injury, and Kenny mentions that he is hurt as well. They all sit by the fire at one point, and then they have barely gotten any sleep. It is the morning, and they have to hike up the mountain, where the order is based on who arrived first yesterday, where the first placers have a 2-minute lead over the second placers, and the second placers have a minute's lead over the third placers. Mike wants to quit, and he and Lori do end up DQing here, where TJ is shockingly easy on them, where he's usually harsh on people who quit. Mike and Leroy definitely had an easier ride compared to the other rookies in the past and the future. Mike being the nerd who was out of his element and getting poked at, while not being a punk, was fun, though his romance with Paula was weird in my opinion. He is a good one-season wonder, and we didn't need to see him back again, though I know many would have liked to see him back again. Leroy definitely had a more under-the-radar first season, and they were fine enough performance-wise, though they never went into elimination. He did have that one blow-up with Tyler at the end, but he did have a good attitude. He came off as very fearless, and I do think it is interesting that he became Johnny's number one, while Johnny's other number ones are on their way out of the show with this season, so that's kind of just interesting to me. Johnny and Tyler eventually do pass Kenny and Wes in the hike, and the two women are neck and neck as they are running up. They have to grab their tracking devices, which would lead them to their keys, and unlock the box. Johnny and Tyler went out of the guys, and we have a flashback of their issues throughout the show, where they are now brothers, and I do believe they're still pretty close-ish. I don't think they have any issues with one another, but I don't think they're like the best of friends, but I guess like distant brothers, or like cordial brothers. Evelyn and Paula do win out of the woman, and Paula is happy to finally win a season, and Evelyn is glad that Paula was her teammate. Kenny and Wes end up arguing when they get up to the top, and Kenny calls Wes a loser who sucks. Cara Maria and Laura leave the season as friends, though we know that it is not to last, but we'll talk a lot more about that in the latest seasons when we eventually get there. Kenny and Wes working together throughout the season, bringing the JEK, Paula, Jen side, in addition to the Nehemiah and Evelyn side together, did make the politics of the season very boring. And Kenny did seem slightly more calm this season, but he did flop in all other challenges, which was funny, and Kenny ended up hating Wes more than ever. Honestly, Wes was a lot more unlikable in the season, thinking that he was masterminding everything that happened, talked a lot of shit but couldn't back it up with the tea, and the pestering of Cara Maria was just lame as hell, no way around it, and I do think he was a lot more hypocritical. I would say that it was a shame that Kenny got banned because he seemed like he was on better terms, or he was on his better behavior in his final 2 seasons, but I do think that the challenge needed this to happen since it moved on from the more toxic elements of the show that really weren't enjoyable while still having a lot of the drama. Speaking of Cara Maria, she didn't get a whole lot to do in the season, at least from what was shown on the edit for like the first 2/3 of the season. We just saw her and Laurel struggle as competitors in the beginning and struggle to really speak in the beginning, but she got more of an edit after she was talking shit about Jen, which caused her to get the smoke that she didn't want, which then eventually led to the conflict with Wes. Seeing Cara Maria and Laura become friends on the season was nice, despite it not lasting. But I do think that if you really look hard enough, you do see some of the reasons why she wasn't liked, which will become a lot more exposed once the edit isn't on her side. But we'll talk about that way more into the future. Laura was seen as a supportive friend this season, but from the clip that I saw at the reunion, she was the one shit-talking Cara Maria to a lot of the veterans and the other players, which fueled the fire. Though she also had her drama with CT and Mandy throughout the season, though this was her weakest performance out of the 3 seasons she has done, especially on a competitive level. She would take a few years off after this. Bananas and Tyler were definitely kind of under the radar this season compared to the other pairs, and I think it's because they seem like they were already in a good place by the time the season started. Of course, Bananas had his fights with CT, and Tyler had his moments with quite a few people on the last few episodes, but they were one of the top 2 teams, and they were a lot more focused. Bananas would be on his own without Kenny and Evan, and we will talk about that more throughout Era 3, and Tyler would not get cast again on the flagship show, despite being close to getting on the next few seasons, and I think it's just due to him not being the most memorable person. He will be on All Stars in a decade, so at least there's that. I don't have much to say about Paula and Evelyn throughout the season. Actually, I'll correct that. I don't have much to say about Evelyn this season, as I only remember some side commentary about her, like making fun of Evan's weight and calling the men dumbasses for their strategy, but it was clear that she was over the show and we won't see her again. Paula's win was definitely foreshadowed this season. She came in with a different hair color, and she was a lot more focused this season, though she had a weird showmance with Mike that seemed put on, though she got into a fair share of drama at the very end of the season as well. Overall, I really do like this season. When I watched it for the first time, I had it at number 1. And now that I rewatched it for this rewatch, and for me to look at this on a more analytical point of view, it might still be number 1, but I could easily see it being like a number 2, number 3, or even a number 4. And I think the main reason for that is due to the lack of politics this season. Like I mentioned here and there, both sides of the Kenny and Wes groupings being forced to work together during the season just made things so stale on a political point of view, and it was kind of a steamroll. What made up for it was the format of the rivals being so good, a lot of the rivalries being very weird, and all the drama that happened from the very beginning of the season to the very end of the season. So many iconic moments that are still referenced today, and it really felt like there was a lot of good drama in this season, but some of the ickiness that Era 2 was known for was starting to go away at this point, and the focus on personal relationships regarding the casting and the themes of this season was a really, really great move. It clearly revived the show because, like I mentioned in the last 2 videos, especially in the Cutthroat video, the last 2 seasons did not get high ratings, and there's talk about it maybe getting cancelled. But this season clearly was such a huge success, and they decided to do 2 more sequels to the Rivals format. Though, at least on a casting point of view, it would never live up to the first Rivals. Having the team that is dead last sent to elimination is really a prevalent thing, at least during the beginning part of this era, and I wish they kept it for the more modern seasons. And it's a really good twist, and it also added to the elements where you needed to perform well in the challenges in order to be safe. So I did like it from that point of view. Honestly, I don't even have a whole lot to say about it. Unfortunately, I could not find the reunion anywhere online. I don't know why they put the seasons on streaming platforms, but they don't put the reunions when the reunions are oftentimes the best part of these reality TV shows. And even on the other sites, the reunions aren't on there either. So that was very frustrating, but I'm definitely looking forward to getting into Era 3, and I'm excited to see what a post Kenny and Evan challenge looks like. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be back with more content soon. Bye!